This magnificent tome is Martin Heidegger's Being and Time. If you're here, I'm guessing that either you've already tried to read it and could make sense of it, or have read it and could make sense of it, or have read it and you're wondering if I'm full of hot air. Because, this book has the reputation of being one of the toughest, most inscrutable, impenetrable philosophical texts ever written, and it's not. And I will explain today why we think it is, why we spend so much time flailing around, and what you actually need to get to an understanding of what's in here. I will give you an actual program, okay, which is the program I used. So my name is Christian Maltais. I will give other details and presentations for later on, but basically I spent most of my adult life as a non-trained philosopher, autodidact essentially, trying to make sense of this. And I spent essentially 30 years trying to work my way through this text. And finally, I finally figured out what needed to be done. And I have spent the last year essentially doing it, and it worked a lot better and a lot quicker than I expected. Okay, so today you will hear from me everything you need to understand Heidegger's Being and Time. Okay, I will in fact give you a complete program that you can use, okay? And you will not like it. You will probably hate what I'm about to say. Your mind will probably say, no, let's click off right now, okay? No, run away, okay? And I know because this is how I reacted for a long time. Okay, which is part of the problem. I'll explain later on. Though the program itself is a lot of fun when you get down to it. The truth is the opposite, most likely, of what you want to hear, but the truth is what I will give you, okay, based on personal experience. Okay, so this is not a theoretical video, okay? This is not a polemical video. This is a practical video about reading Heidegger. Okay, so this video is like if you can't, put together your shelf you got at IKEA, okay, and you're looking online on how to do it. This is this video for Being and Time. The simplest, quickest, easiest way to get there, even if you have zero philosophical training. This will work for everyone. This is the way, okay? Not the one true way of thinking, but the way that gets you there the quickest. Okay, so if you're here, I'll presume you probably want to read Heidegger's Being and Time, but you can't make sense of it. Or perhaps you've already read it, but you still can't make heads or tails of it. You don't know what he's talking about, your eyes glaze over. Or you have read it and you want to know if I'm full of hot air. And I would use a stronger term, but YouTube has become terrible and we have to talk like 5-year-olds. But thankfully, we don't have to think like 5-year-olds. So here we go. Well, my friends, beautiful friends, wonderful friends, I have good news. There is a simple foolproof method of making Heidegger's legendarily inscrutable, obscure, frustrating, infuriating language quite intelligible and more often than not, usually crystal clear, astoundingly clear, in fact, okay? The bad news, what you don't want to hear, is that this will take you 2 years of your life. This will take you 2 years of hard work. That is the truth, okay? And the reason we all get in trouble with Heidegger is because we don't want to put in the 2 years work. We want to skip that step. And you can't. You cannot. Okay? We want to save time, so we spend decades of playing around, instead of the 2 years that you actually need, okay? As I said, this isn't a theoretical video, this isn't a polemical video, this is a technical, practical video. Okay, let's start. I will start by explaining why we fail so much at reading Heidegger, like why we all do it. Like, this is just common experience. I will then explain the main difficulties we have to work through, the actual difficulties. I will then give you a precise program that you can follow, and this will work. I know because I did it, and last year, at least based on reading the introduction, last year I could barely make my way through the introduction, and I just reread, at least beginning yesterday, and it's just super clear. There's no problem fundamentally at this stage after going through that 1 year program. Okay, I mentioned 2 year program, but even the first year will get you most of the way actually. This program mostly involves, drum roll, Aristotle. Again, what you don't want to hear. I want to read Heidegger. Get me there now. Okay, enough with your with your Aristotle. But no. This is the key, okay? That is the key. Aristotle, some Plato, a few others. I suggest you read the whole thing, the whole Aristotle, the whole Plato, but I will give you actually a shorter reading list, like actual titles and the order that you should read them in to make your life easier. Yes. Okay. How do I know? As I said, because it's what I did. It's not a trick. This isn't content. Well, it is, I guess, but this is the real deal. This is all real, okay? Because this video is practical, I will not take time to go over detailed explanations, justifications of why I'm doing this and why. Yes, but not in as much detail as ideally one would go to. So I will not refute every possible objection that might come up and likely will come up in your mind, which are, by the way, sane, rational, valid, and healthy. Okay, this is all normal. This is all good. Okay, I will say things and you might say, oh, why is he saying that? I'm saying it based on experience, but it's just me. I don't want to use the appeal to authority bit, okay, argument. But because I don't want this video to be like 14 hours long, which it would be, this would greatly sidetrack what we're trying to do here, which is give you an actionable program you can use. Okay, it would just be parentheses and digressions. So for that reason, more subtle explanations that would be needed, I will relieve them for other videos. Okay, it's a general idea. If you have questions or preoccupations about some of what I'm presenting here, especially questions, whatever, even objections, I guess. Again, I'm not just saying this for the content, but do write it in the comments, okay? And I will very gladly read them, and I might not write a very detailed description, like answer in the comments, because that's like super long to do. But I will make other videos. So if you have questions, or again, you're not certain about some stuff I'm saying here, just put it in the comments, and I will be very happy with all my heart to go into more details in other videos. Again, just to give you an idea, my name is Christian Maltais. I'm Québécois, yeah, okay, and I'm just a guy, essentially. I'm a writer, poet, musician. I have a ton of YouTube channels. They're still not that big at this time, but 1,000 subscribers around that. They're about science fiction movies, actually. I like to mix science fiction and philosophy a lot. So that's kind of like what I do. And, you know, I've written the first draft of a fantasy novel, stuff like that. But I'm also a self-taught philosopher. I do describe myself, like call myself a philosopher. That's me. And have I read the whole of Being and Time? As I said, no. For reasons I will probably explain a bit later on, almost certainly. But I've now reached a point where the introduction holds no secrets. I mean, for me, I just read it like, oh yeah, okay, he's just saying normal stuff. That stage, right? Okay. As we'll see later on, not having read the whole thing at this, it doesn't really matter, because the point is getting to the stage where you can read it easily, or as easily as you can, which is still, you know, pretty straightforward. And I have reached that level, and so can you, by using the following method. At last, we reach the golden gate of our video. Why is Heidegger so hard to read? Okay. A, what are the manifest difficulties? What jumps out at us? So actually, this is the fun part where we will actually read just a little tiny bit of the beginning of Being and Time, and right away, page 1, we will see some of the many of the more, you know, troublesome things, like painful, hitting your head against a brick wall type of things. Okay, Being and Time. Like, I skipped the introduction, but like, this is page 1. Page 1. Being and Time. Title. First sentence. 3 lines of ancient Greek. Okay. I will not attempt to read it. I mean, I have like Delon ga oas humes. I mean, yeah, so anyway, but yeah, 3 lines of ancient Greek. Okay, so that's that. Then he says, so he translates it. I skipped I will not read it, but okay. And then he says, do we have, like, so the first actual sentence by Heidegger, paragraph 3, do we in our time have an answer to the question of what we really mean by the word being? Question mark. Yeah, being. So we have a note, and the note is a German term. So already, first sentence, okay, the translator says, here's a German word I had trouble with. It's Sein. Heidegger translates Plato's present participle. I mean, yeah, okay, anyway. So yeah, so a bit later on, he's talking about the question of being, like the question of the meaning of being. Okay. Yeah, so we are nowadays perplexed at our inability to understand the expression being. Yeah. So what is it? Why does any of this matter? What is he talking about? Like, this seems hyper abstract and, you know, disconnected from reality. The question of the meaning of being. This sounds like hyper metaphysical. Our provisional aim is the interpretation of time as the possible horizon for any understanding whatsoever of being. Yeah, okay. And yeah, the translator notes on the, so there are translator notes right away, page 1, like half the page is translator notes. And he's talking about, yeah, the word he translated as, you know, interpretation and meaning and being, all these words. Well, you see, they come from this word in German, which can have 8 meanings, and this word in Greek, which can have all these other meanings. And here I mean it this way, and there I mean it that way. That's page 1. Okay, we've read 1 paragraph of actual Heidegger text. Again, it's already super hard. But that's not all. Okay, page 2. Okay, page 2 now. We get into the introduction itself. Like, this was before the introduction. The introduction, okay, it says exposition of the question of the meaning of being. Why? Why is he talking about this? Like, why does any of this matter? Why? What is the question of the meaning of being? Like, this sounds like hopelessly abstract again. And so, introduction and, okay, capital 1, the necessity, structure, and priority of the question of being. Alinea 1, oh, he has alineas. Oh, man, okay. The necessity for explicitly restating the question of being. Anyway, yeah, so it seems like tedious, okay, and abstract and complicated. What is he going on about? Why does any of this matter in the slightest? Last bit of quotations on page 5, I believe. Anyway, it's here. I transcribed it. So the translator, he says, 3 examples. Every inquiry is a seeking. Okay, so what? Okay, what does that mean? But in like parentheses, like the original German, seeking is suchen. Okay, so every inquiry is a suchen. Okay. So yeah, what does that mean? Then a bit later on, same page, this cognizant seeking can take the form of investigating. Every inquiry is a seeking. This cognizant seeking can take the form of investigating. This seems like very putting words out of your hat. But also here, there's the original German word. So here it's untersuchen, okay? Every inquiry is a suchen, but this cognizant seeking can take the form of untersuchen, okay? And last bit of quotation for this issue here is, any inquiry as an inquiry about something has, and the next bit is in italics, has that which is asked about. Expression in italics. Any inquiry as an inquiry about something has that which is asked about. And if you've tried, and if you're here, I'm guessing you have, okay? So you've tried to read Heidegger, and we're always scumming, okay, upon, layers upon layers of sentences like that, like these long expressions in italics, which seem to us like hopelessly abstract and pointing to concepts like, what is he going on about? But here again, that which is asked about, there's brackets again with the original German, and the original German for that half sentence, that which is asked about, is Sein gefragtes, okay, which is just one German word. Yeah, that which is asked about is gefragtes, okay, which has been asked, which it just means that, okay? My German is very rudimentary, but Frage is question, and ge, I think, is like the past participle. So yeah, this means exactly that which is asked about. Gefragtes, that which is asked about. But in English or in French, comes off, you need half a sentence to write that one word, okay? So it comes off as a lot denser and heavier than it actually is. Anyway. Finally, in the list of the main difficulties with our friend Martin Heidegger, well, the whole Dasein thing. Dasein, what does that mean? What is this jargon? Okay, this impossible jargon. He must be an imposter. Many people say that, right? Okay, so these are the main difficulties. What do we usually do? Okay, this is the waste years of your life flailing around algorithm, which I will now present to you. Step 1, you read the text. I can't understand any of this. You're still in step 1. I can't understand any of this. Okay, try to push through. Hit brick wall. Read Wikipedia articles, watch videos, etc. Make no real headway. Fall in the rabbit hole of controversies. Oh my God, he was a Nazi, and he had sex with Hannah Arendt. You can spend your whole life just at that stage, the rabbit hole of controversy, not only can you spend your whole life at that stage, but many, many people do. Okay, many people, that's their career, staying at that stage. And if you want to do that, you do you, okay? Or try to find some secondary literature, make no real headway, okay? And then go to step, okay, and so that's the step one, okay? All that is step one. By the way, the Nazi thing, I mean, obviously it's a relevant question. It's just that you won't find the answer by staying at step one. Okay, spoiling it for you. Okay. Step two, okay, step one, yeah. Step two, try to read some simpler works. Okay. So I've tried to read Being in Time, couldn't make it. I'll go for the easier stuff. The lighter, the well-known easy texts by Heidegger. Okay. But what happens? Same thing. The same algorithm. Okay. I can't understand any of this. Get lost in the Wikipedia videos. Get lost in the controversies all over again, the same ones, okay? Get lost in secondary literature, okay? I'm trying to read what is metaphysics, all the same thing, okay. Okay, so you've wasted 5 years doing that. Move on to step three. Step three, go back to step one. Okay. Oh, I've spent all this time trying to understand what is metaphysics or question of technology. I've read all these pointless Wikipedia articles, didn't understand a thing. I must be ready to read Being in Time now. I'll try it again. Okay. And you get stuck in the same loop. Okay. You never leave it. Or alternatively, step three, option B, snap out of it. Snap out of it and do what you actually need to do. Do the real work, okay? Which I will now detail to you, my good friends. See what we need to do. Ask the right questions. We have a problematic, not politically, but just a text that we don't understand. And that, again, that even includes the political problems and all that. That's part of it. But okay, we have a brick wall of stuff that we don't understand. Okay, who is speaking? Who is writing this? What Homo sapiens is writing this? Martin Heidegger. So who is he? He's a German philosopher. He's a German philosophy teacher, okay, from 1927. i.e., he is a professional philosopher. Okay? Answer one. Okay? Who is he talking to? Okay? Who is this mainly addressed to? Okay? Who does he think is going to read this? Okay? He is talking to other professional philosophers. He is a professional philosopher, and he is talking to other professional philosophers or to philosophy students in 1927, i.e. professional philosophers in training. So what do all these people have in common? Heidegger and the two main strands of his public. All these people have in common a training in professional philosophy, which most of us don't have. So what does that mean? Well, the text reveals it to us, not metaphorically or metaphysically, but as a practical object. Like the text tells us what we need to learn, which is, not to spoil it, but we need to get the equivalent, at least the basic equivalent of a training in professional philosophy. That's why we get confused, because he has it, and the people he's talking to also have it, and if you don't have it, you get lost. Okay, if you like ice hockey and you have, ice hockey fans discussing the subtleties of this game or that game, and if you have never watched a single sport in your life, you're going to get confused. It's not because it's that hard, it's just because you don't have the references. And ultimately that's all it is. That is all it is. Okay. None of the the core either methodology or subject matter, if you like, or explanations of Heidegger are that difficult to figure out once you do have something like a basic, very basic training in professional philosophy, even as an autodidact. We have a Greek text, which professional philosophers are well trained in. Actually, at least they were in 1927. We have some highly structured disposition of words that seem both evident and ambiguous. Well, why? Because we kind of recognize them, but we don't know the meaning, because they have meaning and sense. They're full of normal everyday sense for trained philosophers. Same thing. We have jargon of two varieties. We have philosophical terms like ontic and ontologic, and that also, it's a big part of why you get so confused. There wasn't any in the quotations I gave you, but there are plenty to be found in the beginning pages of the introduction. Again, ontic, ontologic, they're technical philosophical terms. He actually explains them really well, and certainly at least one other book I will mention later on in the program. We have translated terms, wordplay, suchen, untersuchen, simple words often translated as long abstract formulations. So yeah, all these are indications that we just need to get the minimum baggage that Heidegger has and his student or colleagues had. And once we have that baggage, all of that will cease to be intimidating and troublesome, And we will find that actually he's pretty clear. He's a good writer, and he does want to get his point across. He's actually one of the better writers I find in philosophy. So and just a side note here, just an interesting bit. I mentioned that the structure of in part 2, I think part 1. This position of a philosophical, treatise, but like a very academic treatise, Introduction, 1, necessity, structure, and priority, blah, 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 alinea, all that stuff. Anyway, I mentioned that the words used seem both evident and ambiguous. And that is also our relationship to the word being. If I ask you to describe what the word being means, what the verb, you will have a hard time, because the meaning of being is both self-evident, because we all know, I am. So we all know what it means. But if I ask you to define it, you will find it's pretty hard, actually, especially if you're trying to not use is in your sentence. Like, being is what, you can't do that because that's being recursive. You're using the word you're trying to define it. So it doesn't work. Okay. So you know what this is? That is the question of the meaning of being. This is what he's talking about. This is not, hyper abstract arcana. This is what he's talking about. That's, in a sense, that's all it is. That's his introduction. That's his point. That is the question of the meaning of being. Okay? Anyway, so therefore, having said all that, if we want to understand the text, we have to get some philosophical training, enough at least to get us at least part of the way to what a 1927 philosophy student would have. Like even a first-year philosophy student in Germany circa 1927, he would have a basic, philosophical training, at least that level, okay? This is what we're aiming for. Now, to do that, we have two options, two forks. One is go to university or school or something like that. And 2 is learn by yourself, which is what I'm presenting here today. Okay, this is what we'll be doing. So here now are the basic foundations you will need to start engaging with the text, this beautiful text, in a meaningful, satisfying way. All of this you can do on your own as a self-learner. Before we finally begin, basic tips, okay? Basic tips. Now, I spend far more time on Reddit than I should these days, certainly. And there is a Heidegger, subreddit. I'm guessing you all know what Reddit is. Anyway, the place online where people ask questions and give answers in the form sometimes of a couple of words, but sometimes relatively long essays, like a page or two or something like that. Anyway, so the Heidegger subreddit, and that always comes up. Okay, how do I make sense of this? Okay, here's the actual answer to that. Okay, here's the actual answer. Basic tips. Okay, Heidegger comes from Phenomenology. Okay, and most of us, we don't know what that is. The short version is that Heidegger is not describing concepts or ideas. Okay, he's pointing to direct lived experiences as they happen. Okay, he's not pointing to the content of the box, if you like. He's pointing to the fact that the box holds content, okay? Anyway, this is a situation like, when the wise man points at the moon, the fool looks at the finger, okay? And 99% of the main problem people have with Heidegger is that, okay? And it seems strange to us, okay, because the default setting of language, and some people believe, but wrongly, that this is the only one, okay. So some people believe that words point to concepts, and they're trying to understand the concept, but this is not that. If I'm pointing to a sunset, okay, the word sunset does not evoke the experience of the sunset, like the lived experience of the sunset, okay? If I'm saying what a beautiful sunset, and you're like, what do you mean, okay? And you're not seeing the sunset I'm pointing to, you're missing the point, okay? You're looking at the finger instead of the moon, okay? Or the sunset. And here the difference is that sunset is an inner experience, which is being itself, which we have, okay? And the fact that human beings have that ability to look at being itself, that is Dasein. That is what it is. Okay? It's not that hard. Okay? It's not that hard. Okay? Anyway, so you just need to switch mental gear. Okay, and I see so many people like striving and working so hard at trying to understand what did he mean by the being in time that is this and that, and the being in itself that is thrown in the world. No. Stop. Okay, stop. Okay, chotomate. Okay, just what is he pointing to? Okay, it's not a poem, it's not poetry, but it's closer to a poetic use of language, because he's again describing, he's using words to point to an experience, but an experience you're having, like you exist now, you're listening to me now, you have this experience now. So he's like, okay, how do you look at yourself? Okay. Words get in the way because of the nature of what language is. Anyway, that is explanation topic for another video. But this is why it seems so complicated. But bear in mind, he's a phenomenologist, so he's talking about experience, okay, not concept, okay. And he's pointing to something that is lived and experienced now, not last year, not yesterday, immediately now, okay? Not as a concept, but just because you're alive and breathing, okay? It's not normal, okay? Grounded, normal, okay? That, okay? I will give one text by Heidegger later which explain this like super, really transparently, like very well. Okay, so second, Heidegger was a teacher. He was actually a very, very renowned and famous teacher, even as a young man. Obviously, later on in the 30s, because of the political thing, there was a lot of controversy for various reasons. But certainly in the 20s, he was a very loved teacher. He was an admired teacher. And he was a very, very, very good teacher, and that he remained all his life. He is a very good teacher, okay? And you have to bear in mind that his, first of all, his writings usually come from his classes, okay? Even Being and Time, a lot of it is derived actually from classes which have been published now, so you can read. And but even that, okay, which isn't presented as just readings from a class, it's still just at the end of the day like a well-structured work of academic writing. Okay, he's writing like a school teacher. Okay, so either he's thinking aloud or he's writing his detailed, dissertation essentially, but that's what he's doing, okay? But the core thing about the teacher, this is really like the main lesson, is Heidegger is never being deliberately obfuscating. And people, this is like one of the main criticisms, and even Adorno famously, like in the whole jargon of authenticity thing. This is what we usually criticize for Heidegger for, but Adorno is basically wrong here. Like I like him a lot, but he missed the boat, as we say in French. He kind of manqué le bateau. Again, I'll explain in other videos if you like. But the short version is that you do realize eventually. Okay, again, once the gears start, turning in your head and aligning, and you've read enough to start to see what he's doing. Well, he is in fact being as clear as he can, like as clear as humanly can, considering what he's talking about. And he is talking to you like a competent, caring teacher, okay, who wants you to understand. Okay, and this is good to know. It's in the basic tips, because I did wonder about that for a long time. And yeah, like when I was starting out, and for many years, I mean, this is normal reaction. This all seems like, Chinese to me, essentially. This makes no sense. Why is he writing in such confusing, complicated ways? I mean, these words don't mean anything, it seems, right? So this is frustrating, and you ask yourself, okay, is he putting me on? But he's not. Okay, I can confirm. Okay, he is not putting you on. Okay, this is not a fraud. Okay, this is sincere, real, actual work, and this is an actual person with actual thoughts and preoccupations, who is trying to share these things because he thinks they are supremely important and matter at the highest level and deepest level. So he wants you to see what he's pointing to and to understand what he's talking about, because it matters. Like, he devoted his entire life to that, okay? Because it mattered to him, okay? So he is not trying to obfuscate, okay? Many people do in philosophy, but not him, okay? And he is aware. Other thing, he is aware of all the obvious protestations that come up when raising his various questions, and addresses them in good faith, like many of his articles or texts I've read. This comes up pretty often at the beginning of the chapters, or the essay. We will say, some people might object that this and that, like Being and Time, he does it. And which is more or less something that Aristotle would do, and because he's talking in good faith, and all these objections that come up, he has a human mind, they come up for him too. Okay, he's like, yeah, I know this sounds crazy, but here's why it isn't. Okay, and and he explains it like super well. Okay, we get confused with this thing, but wouldn't you agree? Essentially, he's saying that, okay, this is because you're not seeing this part. We've conjoined two ideas that are actually kind of distinct. Okay, so there's a confusion here. So if you see there's a confusion, and you can distinguish between these two things, wouldn't you agree? Essentially, I'm paraphrasing again, that this other thing is actually not self-evident and has problems we might want to elucidate, okay, important problems, like questions. So it's essentially what he's doing in those introductions. So again, he's not like on the cloud somewhere. He's aware that he's saying stuff that sounds strange. And he says it, like a normal person, like almost like talking at a dinner table, okay? He's very conversational, oddly enough. when you get down to it. And finally, on that note, final basic tip is listen to a few recordings of his voice. I found that helps. You just get a feel for his tone and his delivery. I was reading Miles Davis's autobiography, so it reads a lot differently if you've read interviews with Miles, who I love so deeply. I love you, Miles. Or William Burroughs, if you've tried to read Naked Lunch, or if you've read it, if you read it without hearing Burroughs, it reads like a horror story. Okay, but when he reads it, it's one of the funniest things I've ever heard, for real. Okay, I'm not being, I'm not saying that for the content. Okay, it's genuinely one of the funniest things I've ever heard. William Burroughs reading Naked Lunch. Okay, but yeah, on paper it's horrible. So that's that sort of thing here. So if you have Heidegger's voice in your head, or at least you get a general sense of how he would speak, okay, that definitely helps. It makes it less, again, esoteric, because this is really like, even if this is more structured, this is a guy talking to you, okay? Think of all this as this very smart guy, okay, who's just trying to explain these things to you, but not explaining them, again, as dogmas, but as a phenomenon, an experience that we all have, which we tend to not notice and which he thinks is important. Okay? This is the general thing. Yeah, okay, so now, at last, the reading program. Yes! Okay, presented here chronologically, which is the easiest way. Okay, all this from now on, like the reading program, this is all designed to save you time. Okay? Time and effort. Okay, so this is the quickest way to get there, and the easiest way to get there, the most pain-free way to get there. Okay, I laugh because there might be a little pain, but not that much. I mean, anyway, don't worry too much about translations. Okay, I'll mainly be talking about Greek texts, though not only, but at this stage, don't worry too much about translations. Okay, I did a whole video on that. If you like, you can watch it. But most of the translations you will find in bookstores or even Amazon, they are fine. I mean, anything from the 20th century onwards, if somebody is hired by a publisher to translate ancient Greek, if he got the gig, he knows ancient Greek at the very least, right? So he has a minimum of competency, right? So yeah, I would avoid anything published by Squarespace, like self-publishing, not because I have anything against them, but because they will usually be public domain translations so that is to say older translations. And they tend to be not as good. I mean, they have their own merits, a lot of them sometimes. Some are beautiful or historically significant, but translations used to be a lot further from the text than they are now. I mean, the science, if you want to call it that, the discipline of translation really jumped by leaps and bounds in the 20th century. So everything from the year 1900 from today, you're fine in terms of translation. Certainly when you're starting. And along the way, as you'll be reading quite a few texts, along the way you'll figure out your favorites, So don't stress about it, okay? Methodology, do bear in mind, okay? You'll be reading a lot of texts, but you're not reading this to understand every nuance of the reasoning. Oh, Socrates, these minutiae of why he's arguing for this or that. This is not what you're doing here. Okay, this is another mistake that I see a lot of people making. Okay, you want to reach an understanding level which is equivalent to that of a first-year university student in philosophy in Germany in 1927. Okay, this is what you're aiming for. Okay, so in practice, what you're doing is you're learning philosophy as a second language. This is what you're actually doing, and the best way, okay, to learn a second language or a third language is through massive absorption of input, okay? meaningful input. And the meaningful part is why I'm giving you the texts in the order I'm giving them to you. But even if at first you don't understand anything, once you've read, 3, 4, 5 texts by Aristotle, you just get used to it, and you'll be fine. You'll be okay. Don't worry about trying to learn anything. Okay, just absorb it. Just read it. Okay, just for first read through. Okay, this is again in the Adler How to Read a Book. I always forget. What the name of the first level of reading, like the simplest, more superficial level is. But this is what you're doing. Okay, you're not trying to become a master in Aristotle's treatise on the soul. Okay, you have plenty of time later on. Like, you'll just need to get some basic understanding of the discipline and language of philosophy, like the tradition of philosophy. And you will be doing this by absorbing tons of content. Okay, this is what you need to do. Okay, if you do this, which I did, okay, and if you do this for 2 years, or even 1 year, honestly, okay, you will get there. You will reach a stage where you read Heidegger and this is not that bad at all. Okay, and if you skip that step, which I did for more than 20 years, you will hit your head against the wall for 20 years because you will always be trying to avoid this step, which you can't. If you're trying to learn the guitar, same thing. Whatever you're trying to learn, same thing. It's the same thing. So this is a skill. Before you start, read 4 or 5 pages of Euclid's geometry, okay, the elements, and honestly you don't need more than that, and just skim through it and just read the terminology and the definitions, like Euclid's definitions. This is 1 page. Okay, read that. And page 2, okay, the postulates, Euclid's, and then the common notions, okay, and just look, generally speaking, like, the first of Euclid's proposition, okay, page 1, page 2, page 3. Just do that, okay, maybe come back to it in a few weeks or months, okay. Why? Because when you read Aristotle, you will see the affiliation. Okay, I actually read that bit of Euclid much after I had finished reading Aristotle. Well, after anyway. For that reason, I had failed to notice just how much of Aristotle's basic relationship to the act of thinking comes from geometrical rigor. Okay, so again, not the content, but the methodology. And though Heidegger is mainly saying that putting too much importance on that is part of the problem, okay, it is still, in effect, part of the solution, if only because he's talking to us from the point of view of somebody who has absorbed that form of thinking, which is rigorous philosophical thinking. So that's why you're doing all this, okay? Because you're ingraining these reflexes like organically, okay? This will seep through your entire soul and body, okay? You will absorb it just by being present with these, masters, like these guys, these bearded guys from the past, okay? So read 4 or 5 pages of Euclid if you dare, but it's only like 3-4 pages. Then read the Presocratics. Okay, our first real entry into our program is read the Presocratics. For all this, I'm giving you the least amount you need, okay? The minimum you need if you don't want to read, thousands of pages more than you need to. Okay, so for the Presocratics, read the big 3, who are Heraclitus, Parmenides, and Empedocles. Okay, there are other who are important, but others. But I think if you start with these 3 to begin with, you'll be fine. These are fun. I mean, I like them. They're super interesting as a human being because they have very differing views on not like just existence in general, like a different relationships really to being itself. Like Heraclitus is essentially a mystic or something like that. It's all very fascinating and quirky. Anyway, what's cool is that this is a quick read. Okay, these are often fragments, the Presocratics. You can easily get all this, these three authors, you can get all this under your belt in a day or two. Okay, so yeah. Next, after you have read this, okay, you might want afterwards to complete this with other Presocratics, but I would start with these three. Okay, I encourage you to read more, obviously, but this is the minimum. You start with that, and complete as you wish to complete along the way. Okay. Then Plato. Okay. Plato. Read everything except all the dialogues. Okay, you don't need to read the letters, most of which are apocryphal. They are interesting, but forget about the letters for now, okay? You don't need them for this. And you don't need to read the laws. You can thank me later. And you don't need to read the Republic. And you might say, oh, the Republic, the most important philosophy book in history and most, Plato's, masterpiece. And yeah, and a lot of people who say that they haven't read it. Okay, that's topic for another day. I agree that the allegory of the cave is beautiful and that the Republic is filled with beautiful passages, and this is true. But it is all people quote it for what they think it says than rather for what it really says. But all this actually, at the end of the day, doesn't matter because, again, our goal here is to reach the minimum level of a philosophical student, a German student from 1927, but only as pertains to understanding being and time, like not even his later works. Like this is one of his earliest works. Okay, he moved on from that, Heidegger, afterwards. Okay. It was still part of it, but there's the famous turn anyway. So we don't need to read the laws and the Republic because they have no bearing really for this work to understand this. Okay, and if you want to read it, go ahead. Even the laws, I mean, they are very interesting in the meta kind of way, but again, that's a topic for other days. For today, I mean, again, the goal is to get to Heidegger as quickly as you can. So read every dialogue in order. You will pretty easily find lists of presumed order of publication. The truth is that we don't know the order of publication of Plato. People disagree and put them in different orders. Sometimes they disagree in important, significant ways. But most of the time, you will usually find them more or less in the same order. You can feel the difference as he's growing, like Plato, as a writer and a thinker. You can feel it, which is why you want to read it chronologically, because it will give you a better understanding of how Plato is growing as a thinker, and it's also much easier for you. A lot easier, okay? It's like Plato is his own tutorial, okay? And they're dialogues, so they're pretty easy to read. Plato is a very fun writer in that regard. All his characters, they are characters, contrarily to many other philosophical dialogue writers. These are actual characters based on real people he knew. And you can tell he's really good at capturing the personality and I want to say the essence, like in a non-philosophical term, like the essence of a character, which makes it a lot of fun and interesting for political reasons. But the main reason, like you want to read all of it because there's actually a few you can skip in the early ones, but it's just simply to read them. I could have given you a list of Greek names that you could skip, but yeah, just read them. So read all of Plato except the Laws and the Republic, which are quite thick, so you will save some time there. You can skip through read very quickly the early ones if you like. But they're all quick reads, okay? And you're doing this because you want to understand Aristotle better. So having read Plato, you will understand Aristotle a lot better. And Heidegger also knew Plato pretty well, and he had, even by that stage, I think, written, books or taught classes at the very least on Plato. He is referenced in, Being in Time. I think that Greek quotation was from Plato. You want to read Plato because he's the foundational author of what we think of as philosophy. So you need it. So you have no choice. And Heidegger knew him really well. It's part of his baggage. It shows. He's implicitly referencing him, if only in the way he talks about certain things, the way he's in relationship with the issues. Anyway, okay, just take my word for it for now. Read Plato, okay? And having done that, okay, you start with the Presocratics. Then Plato, go through the whole thing, skip the Republic, skip the Laws. And even though Plato and Aristotle, they coexisted for a while, and Aristotle was Plato's student, and they share a timeline for a while, I would wait until I've finished reading Plato until starting Aristotle, and then I would just do Aristotle. So read all of Plato, finish Plato, then Aristotle. Aristotle, we will not be reading the whole thing. I mean, I did, okay, but you don't have to. This is the only one for which I will recommend the translation. There are many good ones, okay, but the one I recommend is the Oxford complete works in 2 volumes. There are 2 editions. They're both good. There's also the Loeb bilingual translation. I believe it is very, very, very good. I intend to start acquiring them very soon. The Oxford, certainly I've read quite a few of Aristotle in the Oxford translation. It is very good. You want to usually get editions with notes. Yeah, I didn't mention this because it will just help you massively. Okay, usually the more notes, the better. There are exceptions, but it's a good sign. You don't need to read the prefaces, though it usually helps. And so yeah, for Aristotle, Oxford or Loeb, and read in the following order. Okay, get a pen and pencil. Okay. And why this order? Because this will make your absorption of Aristotle's style and method the easiest. Okay, so this is why this order. It's not the order of the Corpus Aristotelicum, like the traditional order. It's not the chronological order. It's this will make your life much easier order, because Aristotle is always hard. There is no easy text by Aristotle. Okay, so start with the Nicomachean Ethics, number 1. That's what I did. This is cool also because it's such a famous work for good reason. So start with that. Then this is a bonus, but I suggest you do it. I would go with the other big ethics by Aristotle, so the Eudemian Ethics, and I would follow that with the Politics. So those are the 3 big political/ethical treatises by Aristotle. Again, short version. There are discussions about apocryphal texts. We don't worry about that today. Okay, so these are not necessary to understand Heidegger. Neither actually is the Nicomachean Ethics, but they will play a tremendous role in making you really understand what Aristotle is trying to do and how he thinks. And if you read only one Aristotle work, you will not understand it. You will think you do, which is even worse. Okay. So you need to read quite a few before you finally figure out, this is what he's doing. Nicomachean ethics, Eudemian ethics, politics, physics. Then you will read the physics, which is very interesting. There are 4 actually physical treatises by Aristotle. You will read the first 3. So physics, on the heavens, and finally on generation and corruption. This one seems a bit odd based on its title, but it's one of my favorites. It's super interesting. The 4th one, it's on meteorology. It's interesting, has cool stuff on the elements, but you don't need it. Okay, so you can skip it. So having read on the 3 first physics books, which will help you a lot in understanding, again, the structure of his thinking and his methodology and lots of important things actually by Aristotle. Then move on to the Organon. So those are the logical treatises. There are 6 of them, 6 books in the Organon. You will read all 6 in the order, so from 1 to 6, categories on interpretation, the 2 analytics, on topics, and sophistic refutations. So read that. First 2 categories and on interpretation, they're quick. They're relatively easy to understand. It's super technical. Aristotle is like that. So all these words and categories, like it's quite technical, but that's what you're learning, okay? This is what you're letting your body absorb, okay? This is why you're doing this, okay? So you're deep in it by this stage. When you reach the book 3 and 4, so the 2 analytics, you will not understand anything. This will feel like a brick wall. This is normal. Trust the process. Even if you understand nothing, at least try to skim through the whole thing, okay? And it might feel pointless, but it isn't. This is the most painful part of the Aristotle process. You bite the bullet, okay? Do that. Having done that, having crossed the Sahara of the analytics, you will get movement of animals and progression of animals. There are 2 reasons you want to read those at this stage. Okay, there are more actually, but the 2 main ones. It will give you at least a flavor of Aristotle's zoological texts, which are super important for his project. And the more you understand Aristotle's project, the more you will get from Heidegger. Okay, even though they're not directly related, but it will again make your life easier and you will appreciate it a lot more. And there are like a quarter, I think, of the works of Aristotle we still have are his zoology books. I have read them. They're not my favorite part. Okay, but movement of animals and progression of animals, they're very quick. You can read again both of these probably in a single day, like both of them. I read them in French, my edition, they're published together. It's probably like 80 pages all in all. Only one of them is really relevant because it has kind of something to do with what Aristotle calls the soul, in a sense. Like it's leading to the general question of the soul as Aristotle sees it. I think it's movement of animals that is like that. But you might as well read the progression too, because it will give you an idea of what these zoological texts are like. And again, it's a quick read. After that, you get one of the really meaty treatises of Aristotle. I believe it's generally considered the last, though I'm not certain, on the soul, the anima. This is a massive text. This is one of those Aristotle books I tend to spend a lot of time with. Most important is the third book. Okay, they're usually divided by books, the treatises by Aristotle. This one has 3, and read the whole thing, but the most relevant will be the third. It's been quite often commented on by Islamic philosophers and Alexander of Aphrodisias and people like that, Aquinas and all these people. Averroes has a famous commentary on the Anima. So this is one of the most important philosophical works ever, by far. So that you need to read that. Then you will read the short zoological natural treatise, like the Parva Naturalia or Parva Naturalia. These are a collection of 8 or 10, I think, very, very small works, like 10, 20 pages, something like that. Hence their name, like little treatises, natural treatises. They are about natural science, but you will find that many of them are actually connected to the question of the soul, and that is because the question of the soul, as far as Aristotle is concerned, has much more to do with natural science than, let's say, theology. If you're interested in On the Soul, which you likely will be, then the Parva Naturalia is a complement to that. It's actually like an adjacent piece, and you will get much from it. Okay, and it's a quick read. And finally, the Metaphysics. So you end with that because for 2 reasons. The first is the most complicated. And second, you've toiled all these months at reading Aristotle, and you save the best for last. Okay, it's like if you're eating chocolate cake for your birthday, you save the cherry for the last bite, right? Or the big chunk of frosting. Okay, so metaphysics is our frosting, our very dense and complicated frosting. You also save it for last because once you've read the other books, okay, by Aristotle, you will observe that it's a lot less incomprehensible than you might experience if you haven't read the others. Okay, so I had tried to at least read a couple of pages of the Metaphysics. I'm sure if you're watching this, you have as well. Well, it's nigh on incomprehensible, right? Same thing as with Heidegger. What is he going on about? What is all this? Okay, but if you've read all the other stuff, which I've just mentioned, when you get to the Metaphysics, it's a lot easier to understand. Like a lot, like orders of magnitude easier. It's still tough going at times, but nowhere near. Okay, it's understandable, it's doable. To recap, our Aristotle corpus, the shortened corpus for this program, this project, which is you reading Being and Time finally and making sense of it. Okay, so your list is start with the Nicomachean Ethics, then optionally the Eudemian Ethics and the Politics. You don't have to, but I suggest you do. It will make your life easier, and they're super interesting. So yeah. Then the Physics, which is very good. Then On the Heavens. Then On Generation and Corruption. Then the Organon, so the 6 books of Aristotle's logic. You will have a hard time understanding the Analytics, just push through. And then Movement of Animals / Progression of Animals. These are 2 works, read that. Then On the Soul, the Anima, then the Parva Naturalia, and then the glorious Metaphysics. Yes. 2 notes. First, when his students, Heidegger's students, asked them about Nietzsche, what do you think? How should we get about reading Nietzsche? Heidegger responded that first, they shouldn't. They should not, as students, read Nietzsche. They should spend 10, 15 years reading Aristotle. I forget where he said that, but I read that like recently, like a quote, okay? So that gives you an idea where he's coming from, and hence where he's writing from, you see? And he wasn't joking. I mean, I'll be reading Nietzsche next year, next year, I think. So I'm not waiting 15 years, but I did read the Aristotle thing. I suggest you do. You should ideally read all of it, including the Apocrypha. I think the Oxford has all of it, the Corpus Aristotelicum, as it's called. I think it has the whole thing. I know the Loeb has also. And you might find that having started, you'll want to read the whole thing. So ideally read it all. The more you do, the better results you will get. But even if you only read the ones I listed, you should be fine. So that's note 1. And note 2, reading Aristotle is one of the greatest gifts you will ever give yourself. This will change your life in the most magnificent way. Aristotle is super beautiful and wonderful. I'm tempted to say one of the greatest human beings that ever lived. Certainly one of the most, whose life has proven to be like a generous offering to the betterment of mankind. Okay, so yeah, it's just good. Okay, just do it. It will greatly improve your experience, your entire life, and your entire experience of life. Okay, yeah. Other philosophical works. Okay, the main thing is Aristotle, and as I mentioned, I mainly read that. Okay, so I built a corpus, like a 4 or 5 year corpus of philosophy, to read Being and Time and Marx's Capital, but that's a topic for another day. And I had this idea that it would take me 4 or 5 years of hard work to get to a point where I could understand Being and Time. But to reach actually the level I'm at now. And I was extremely pleasantly surprised to discover that it only took that 1 year of reading the Greeks to reach that level, which is again the entry level, but you have entered. I mean, you're not master level, but you are comfortable in the entrance where you're at, okay? You can recognize what's going on, you can understand what people are saying, okay? It's not absurd mumbo jumbo. It makes sense what you're hearing. Okay, so that level, 1 year of Aristotle and Plato, like what I just said, will do it for you. Okay, it will work. Okay, but having said that, there are other works, additional works, which will make your life easier. What are the essentials? Not a few. This will be quicker here. First, the essentials are Immanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. You don't need to read the whole thing, I believe. But for Being and Time, I mean, you basically need to really understand what transcendental means, which is essentially, and again, from what I understand, okay, it's essentially something that doesn't come from the senses. Okay, it's something a priori, which is to say that your reasoning capacity has inbuilt capacities which allow it to experience certain things, possibly. Okay, which it needs to be proven, which is what a Critique of Pure Reason is doing, because there's a twist actually, like, ooh, like the usual suspects, there's a twist at the end. Well, in Critique of Pure Reason, it's not at the end, it's like at a quarter of the way through, and you need to get that far. Okay, and so I mentioned I haven't read the whole of Being and Time yet. So yeah, just to be, again, I opened it quite a few times recently, and I realized that I could read it and make sense of it. But he does talk about transcendental stuff, and it's obvious he's referring to Kant, and he's presuming that you've read it and that you know it pretty well, at least that part, okay, I just mentioned. And so that's why I haven't read the whole thing yet, essentially, okay, because I want to read Kant, okay. And on my program, which again, it's on the Substack if you want more details, other videos, that doesn't matter. But in my own reading program, because I really want to absorb it really well, because it also interests me for itself. So I'm not just trying to get to Being and Time as quick as I can. I also want to take a long time with Kant, and because I want to understand Kant better, I need to read other stuff, which is a lot more than what I'm giving you here today. But you don't need to do all that. Okay, I'm doing it, but you don't have to. You can get there quicker. It just depends how much you want to have dived into more of the minutiae and the details. Okay, but for Kant, you will need to read some Hume and I think Berkeley, a couple of others, not that much, but there are a few other authors that will be required. Really, I will eventually, almost certainly, do a video on the whole Kant project because that's coming later on this year. We'll talk about that then. But in terms of the Being and Time minimal curriculum, you need Kant's Critique of Pure Reason, at least the first 200 pages. Like the famous, I forget the name, but the turn, like the epistemological turn, like the big reveal about the nature of reality and consciousness, like that thing. You need to get there and to basically understand what he means by transcendental and be comfortable with that. Okay, you need that and Hegel, the Logic, which I'll be reading next year. The Logic and the Phenomenology of Spirit. Now, actually, Heidegger mentions the Logic quite a bit. I really believe you don't really need it. Okay, I do really strongly believe that if you've only read the Aristotle, you will get most of the way. Okay, you won't be missing so much as to be unable to understand it. I know because, as I mentioned, I understand what he's saying. You will reach that level, okay? But you will definitely get more out of it, okay, if you've read Critique of Pure Reason and the Logic and the Phenomenology of Spirit. So these are the three essentials. For Hegel, I would suggest reading the whole thing. But again, topic for another day. For today, these two, you'll be fine, okay? Minimum, corpus, you will be okay. These two. Then, quickly, medieval thinkers. We're strongly getting into the bonus category here, but you will get further again if you've read these. Thomas Aquinas, okay, big influence on Heidegger and on Being and Time. He says this explicitly, okay, Thomas Aquinas. This is the Oxford anthology. There's also a good Penguin anthology. They don't have the same texts mostly, so it's good to have both. So that, I'll be reading it. I should be reading this in a month or two at most. Like, this is coming up very soon. And Duns Scot, this is a big influence on Heidegger. I think his doctorate thesis was on Duns Scot. It's published, you can read it. So I also intend to read that soon. There's no one specific title he mentions, but there's a collection by Hackett simply called Philosophical Writings, a Selection. So I would read that. Hackett, usually they're not very big books, like 100 pages or something. So that should also be a relatively quick read. And you want to read both Aquinas and Duns Scot because Heidegger says that there are among the few philosophers of the last 2,000 years who really got close to what he's talking about and who really saw the problem and who have really profound things to say about the whole question of being. The short version. So it is directly linked to his project and the content and what he's saying in Being and Time. Bonus, Grammatica Speculativa by Thomas Erfurt. Okay, I believe that when Heidegger wrote Being and Time, it was thought that, Duns Scot had written that. It was eventually attributed to Thomas Erfurt. I'm not sure about this, but I seem to recall that. And I also seem to recall, I'm not certain, but that I seem to remember that this Grammatica Speculativa might actually be what he referred to as a Duns Scot writing, something to do with his doctoral, thesis. Anyway, this is hard to find. There is an edition from the 70s in English, like a translation. You can buy it used. I think it's around like the 70 to 80, like 70, 80 to $100, like kind of price range. Usually, like on eBay, you'll find it at that price. You can usually find these books if you're patient enough. You might find it at $3 at the thrift store, right? But anyway, it's hard to find because there's only that one edition. So one of the reasons it's a bonus. But there's some stuff there that's related to the whole thing of consciousness. apparently. So a good bonus, and also some Kierkegaard and some Martin Luther and stuff like that, because there's a, well, he's called sometimes like Christian or Catholic, or people have made comparisons with his worldview and certain like Christian, traditions, but he mentions in the text I'm about to name in a few seconds that this is actually incorrect in terms of his philosophical work, at least. But the Kierkegaard and the Martin Luther, this is a bonus, but I think you will probably again get a bit more out of it because it did shape his general, approach to life, which is reflected in the works. General idea here. Kierkegaard, I don't know which, like just pick one or two, and yeah, it's not at this stage. It's not a big deal. And finally, other texts by Heidegger. The one I would suggest, actually two. Okay, the first one is The Basic Problems of Phenomenology. This is the main one I've been referring to throughout this video. It's out of print, but used copies are easy to find. They are usually about $40, so not that much. The intro you can read for free online, which I did, which is mainly what I was referring to today. And certainly I found it extremely simple and easy to understand in a conversational type of way, even though it is a philosophical text and he's talking to philosophers. But again, you read, okay, if you have a hard time reading it today, I will quote it in the description. If you have a hard time reading it today, do what I described today, and in a year you'll be fine. Okay, you will have no problem at all reading that text by Heidegger, The Basic Problems of Phenomenology. Again, the introduction is available for free online on the Marxists.org website, which they have actually a lot of cool texts. This will give you a very good explanation in very simple, almost layman's terms, of what he means by phenomenology, and a big part of what he presupposes you already know if you're reading this. Like, it's all there. It's all explained in really simple language. Okay. As simple as it can be for technical philosophical stuff. Okay. But yeah, that's what it is. So The Basic Problems of Phenomenology, that one is very good. And the Basic Writings. This, easy to find, very good. This has the introduction to being and time. It has a question of technology concerning technology. It has what is metaphysics, origin of the work of art. So yeah, so most of the really big Heidegger text, it's basic in that sense. Like, this is really a very good, very, 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 very good anthology of Heidegger texts, and as philosophical anthologies go, it's really one of the better ones. It has the letter on humanism, like this is the bilingual German-French version, which is essentially his dialogue with Jean-Paul Sartre, and his very, very generous and nice way of telling Jean-Paul Sartre that he didn't understand Heidegger at all. Like the nicest way you can tell somebody that he really doesn't get it. Anyway. You have that in the Basic Writings. This is good. Okay, you can get a ton of mileage just out of this. Books on Heidegger's thinking, I only, like a secondary source, I will recommend one and only one. It is the Steiner book. George, I forget his first name. The Steiner book. It's simply called Heidegger. I think it's from the 60s. It's not that recent. Doesn't matter. There's plenty in there. In fact, all you need, if you're looking for some, like a secondary source, just to get you partly there, just to, okay, that one, it's really all you need. Okay, he gets it. He understands it. He talks about the polemics I've mentioned. He understands the works. It's all written in very easy to understand language. It's a relatively quick read. I think it's easy to find. So it only has qualities. Do that. Okay, use that one. There are many actually good books on Heidegger, but I'm only mentioning this one because the thing is that, well, there are also a ton of terrible ones. Okay, and because there's so much polemics surrounding Heidegger for various reasons, I don't know if there are as much terrible Heidegger books as good ones, but sometimes it even feels like there are more of them. And especially concerning the whole Nazi question and polemics, there's a ton of bad takes. It's easy to score cheap points, you know, and to say I'm better than this world famous philosopher because he was a Nazi, and this proves he was a Nazi, and we know he was, you know, but you know, usually the question centers around is his philosophy tainted by his Nazi beliefs, and this is such an ill-informed take. Like, but how do I know this? And I've read the Black Notebooks. I have read the first one. I did read, not the whole thing, but I've read the political discourses, which are appalling. I agree, but the thing is that most of the people who criticize, they haven't done the program I'm talking about. So they think they know, but they don't. And most of them don't. I don't think they're putting in the effort. A lot of the political discourse is on the level of like a Reddit feud. That's a sad truth. I hate to say it. But, okay, I'm saying this, but how do you know I'm telling the truth? Okay. Well, you need to do the work. This is my point. Okay. Because, and the reason why I only recommend reading one secondary book is that, like, let's suppose I'm wrong about my interpretation of the Nazi thing and the Black Notebooks and all that stuff, like the polemics. Maybe, okay, let's say I'm wrong. I mean, it is possible to present a good faith argument why I'm wrong. It is possible. Okay. But you need the basic understanding of the issue and the question and the topics and you need a basic grounding on what the topic is to have an informed opinion. You see? And if you're reading the secondary sources, which we all do, I spent like 20 years doing that, okay? But I did not have enough of the basic grounding to tell which book was good and which book was terrible. So you're much, much, much better off putting all the work I just described than, you know, spending 2 years reading secondary sources, which will get you pretty much nowhere. Okay, because either you will have false ideas or false impressions, or you don't have the judgment to tell when somebody is knowledgeable and when somebody isn't, and when he has an axe to grind, and when he's, you know, and there's so much of that stuff. Okay, in all of philosophy, we rely on secondary sources because we feel it will save us time and effort. And you get back what you put in. Okay. There's no going around it. So, bonus languages, very quick. This is really a bonus. So we're at the end of our little journey for today. Do you need to learn German? Nope. I have like A1, A2 level, I guess, at this stage. I can understand some of what Heidegger says, like in his videos or philosophical videos. Sometimes I understand surprisingly large parts of it, but even Kant, there are bits I understood in German of Critique of Pure Reason. So yeah, that's pretty cool. But still, I'm at very basic levels, which is plenty. Okay, obviously, the more you know, the better you get, the better it is. But it is an appreciable bonus to have at least a more than zero knowledge of German. And why? Because it just gives you a better feel of the difficulty of translating the two. When you see the German word, you just have a different relationship to it, and you better understand the type of difficulties that come from translating that often quite simple word, even though often Heidegger twists it around, but he's still starting from a commonplace, word very often. And when it's translated in English, it becomes like very otherworldly, the equilibrium of it disappears, and that really distorts our perception. So yeah, short version is that even a tiny bit of German will make a big difference. So I suggest you do that. It's worth it. Same for the Greek, like the ancient Greek. I would suggest you just learn the alphabet. Start with that. Just learn the alphabet so you can generally read. And even if the words don't mean anything at first, again, you're absorbing stuff. So eventually, oh, ousia, or something like that. Oh, okay. You logos. Okay, oh, this means logos. Okay, so, and you will kind of absorb stuff like that. And same with the German. It seems like almost trivial. Just learn the Greek alphabet and read along when you have a Greek word, even if you don't understand anything. But this will also help you. Okay, this will also greatly improve your general experience of the text, and you will definitely get more insights and deeper insights, even with that very basic knowledge of the alphabet. Okay, little goes a long way, but obviously the more you have, the better it is. And Latin, this also comes up. With Heidegger, probably less so. Still very helpful. Bonus thing here, like what's cool is it's the same alphabet. Like we use the Latin alphabet, so Latin is easier for that. Again, if you know a little bit, you will get more out of the text. These are all bonuses, but because so much of Heidegger is tied in with language, and because at the end of the day, so much is idiosyncratically German in terms of the language. And because he relies on ancient thinkers and hence on Greek and Latin, and it's such a big part of what he does, at least getting a very superficial level of these three languages, Greek, Latin, and German, ancient Greek, you will thank yourself. And I think we're getting, the test. I guess you've done all that. I guess you're turning away. Oh, I've read Aristotle, but I still have to read that book. Oh, okay. Am I ready? Am I ready to read Being and Time? Well, it's quite easy. Here's the test you do, okay? You pick up your beloved copy, or copies. You should have multiple in multiple translations to compare. But yes, you read it and you go with the introduction, okay? And you start reading, and if you had the first, couple of paragraphs, if your eyes start to glaze over and you're like, I'm confused, this makes no sense, you're not there yet. So continue with the reading program. And if you read it and you're like, yeah, I've been hitting brick wall, so you're expecting the brick wall, you see. You've associated this text with the brick wall. So you're like, okay, I'm waiting for the brick wall. Waiting for the brick wall. Waiting for the brick wall. And you're at page 4 or 5 and you haven't hit the brick wall yet. You have arrived, my friend. You have arrived at the antechamber. You have defeated the level 1 bus of Heidegger's Being and Time. Okay. Which is the goal of this enterprise, the level 1 bus, which is by far the toughest to beat. Okay, so congratulations. I want to place a sorry Mario, but Heidegger is in the other castle joke. Yeah, he's in the same castle, except like he does turn, as I mentioned, like the famous turn in the 50s anyway. Whatever. Again, note that I have not presented you with my understanding of Being and Time. Okay. Little bit, but not really. First of all, because as I mentioned, I haven't read the whole thing yet. And because, what I have presented you with is how you can acquire the basic knowledge that will allow you to form your own understanding, which is how it should be. Okay. You should read it and understand it by yourself. Okay. Right? Become your own master. So, like any other subjects, there are countless opinions out there about Heidegger. Most of them, sadly, are worthless. If you want a valid opinion about something, you need to do the work. And I have now given you the tools you need to do that work. So there you go. I have a Patreon. If you want to support my own work, you are the best, and I love you with all my heart. And you are a groovy person. The Patreon, it helps a lot. So I have a Substack. I think everything is free for now. Anyway, yeah, I have a Substack. That's not much stuff. There is some stuff there, certainly, like the philosophical corpus. Yeah, and I also have my other YouTube channels if you're curious. But yeah, that's enough for today. Until next time, this is Christian Malte. Keep watching the skies, live long and prosper. And yeah, I'm signing off and reminding you to just read the text. Okay, should be read the damn text. I'm still still working on the slogan, but just do it. Okay, just read the stuff. Ciao. Bye. Okay.